Joe Vardon joins us right now from The Athletic on the Fan Hotline. Joe, good morning.
I was watching you guys on the streaming site this morning, and Ken, you're wearing a very nice shirt today.
Oh, this is an old one, actually. This is an old flannel, and now I'm wearing a jacket because the AC was on in here, and I was freezing. I was freezing my baguettes off. Joe, let's stop beating around the bush. Stop trying to change the subject.
The small talk to get out of talking about the horrors that we have to talk about.
Is Kenny Atkinson on the hot seat? Yes or no?
I think the short answer is yes, but you have to remember that the hiring was a little off in terms of how that process went, and so I can't speak to who gets to make these kinds of decisions, but we have to remember that the front office largely had presented James Borrego as choice one, and Dan basically pushed the decision towards Kenny. So, that's why I hesitate there. But yeah, I think there's some I think that not everybody's on the same page right now, and losing has a lot to do with that. It hasn't been a good couple months, and at the same time, certainly Kenny, but I think the organization at large had expected the early part of the season to be nothing like last year. But then at the same time, you're 29 games in and you're one game over 500. That's not good. That is not probably what they expected either. So, there's a lot of injuries for sure. They're playing players who are, they're either too young collectively, and then, in a couple of these guys' case, last year they were barely in the league, and now they're getting major minutes. Like that's a challenge. So there's a lot of reasons for all of this, but, considering how expensive the roster is, and what it looks like right now, I think there are some hard questions.
Yeah, Joe, the injuries, we saw around the NBA, and Tom Haberstroh put out that piece about all the injuries around the NBA. So I fail to see that as a excuse here, or even a justification, because they've had enough talent to win these games. I mean, San Antonio went 9-3 without Wemby. Okay, Golden State came into Cleveland and beat us with a lacrosse star, without Draymond Green, without Steph Curry, without Jimmy Butler. Nobody can convince me we don't have enough talent on a lot of given nights on the floor.
Well, so this is something I've been thinking about, just sort of how they got here, and I had made the contention that almost no one on the roster improved from year over year. And I've been floating this, to some people in the organization, and I don't know if pushback is the right word, but more like a little bit of a clarification as to how they view it. And, they like Donovan is actually playing better, statistically, or however you want to measure that. Obviously Tyson improved, and Sam Merrill had really improved, but that's based on a much smaller sample size. And then you look at Darius, worse, Jarrett, worse, Wade, worse, Mobley, slightly worse. And then I think there's a caveat there too, and then Lonzo, he's been a minus offensively, and it's also been a tough pairing to have him on the team at the same time that you have Darius, given Darius's injury issues. Hunter, substantial drop. I should have mentioned that. Obviously, Tomlin has improved, but when you start to listen to all this, and then you realize, the major minutes that Tyson and Tomlin are getting at a time when some of the veterans that you really count on aren't playing nearly as well as they did. And then also, that Strus has been out the whole time, and now Mobley's out a month. And before that, it was other guys who were out, and so on and so forth. So, no Anthony, it's not just the injuries, but then when you look at what else is going on, and then you apply the injury thing to it, it is kind of hard to determine exactly what this team is if they ever get healthy.
Joe Vardon joining us on the show. So, like, if things aren't going well, like, is there how much blame is like a Donovan then? I mean, he's the best player. Is there anything there?
So, I go back to, and I know fans love this, when this was a few weeks ago when Tyson said the thing about the effort not being there. And I think the intimation was he was talking about some of the older players, but like, who could he mean? I don't think that he could possibly have meant Donovan. I think Donovan has played as well and as hard for this team as he has. So then who did he mean? Was he talking about Jarrett? Was he talking about Evan? Was he talking about DeAndre? Like who are we talking about here? So I don't blame Donovan, of course, not at all. And I wrote, before this all turned south, I wrote that it would be interesting to watch this team fully commit to him as a scorer and see if he can win the scoring title and see what that means for the offense come the postseason. But if you like I guess the biggest thing that we all have to consider is what this team has been able to accomplish, regardless of who the coach is, in the playoffs. Recognize that they've been together for a while, and they've had some opportunities. And then think about the cost. I mean, they are the only second APR team currently in the NBA, which means they have the most expensive roster with the most restrictions on how to change it. And at what point does ownership decide that the cost of this roster is not worth what they're getting from it? So, I don't think you make that call in December. We're still not even to Christmas yet. Max Strus hasn't played a game. Mobley is out a month. The Pacers at this time last year were not very good, and they ended up being, they were awesome, obviously, all the way until Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So, it actually still isn't time to press panic buttons, but, those are the major, those are the major themes right now. And then when you talk about at the beginning, like, well, is Kenny on the hot seat? And my short answer was yes, but that's just because, like, of all of these factors, right? Like, they're not winning. They haven't gotten where the organization felt they should playoff wise. This roster is crazy expensive. And, are you going to decide as an organization that this roster isn't going to get it done? Or if you still think it can, well, then why isn't it? So there's a lot going on right now for sure.
Well, Joe Vardon with us. The reason this even comes up at all is because you just outlined there's not much in the way of flexibility that you can alter things to change it for the better this year. And you're seeing effort as an issue almost on a nightly basis. So because of that, and Dan Gilbert's your owner, and he seems to be a lot more active than he was there for a few years, given his situation. So all of that would lend itself to believe that, in that league where coach of the years get fired in the same year they win coach of the year. This happened twice over the last 15 years, 20 years, with George Karl 1 year, and I think it was Dwayne Casey another year. Like, guys get fired the year they win coach of the year. It's not crazy to believe a guy could get fired the very next year. That's happened, a handful of times as well.
No. It's certainly not. And I mean, of course, as far as team sports go, NBA coaches are in the most, well, I couldn't even tell you the word. They're in like the strangest position of, the responsibility is theirs, but also like they're probably the least, they have the least amount of power of anybody in their position in other sports. And, if if you have an expensive roster that you believe in, especially given that these players are all none of them are too old. So if you are of the mind that the roster is not the issue, and yet you see that the players aren't playing as hard as they used to, then you make the decision that they've just simply tuned out the coaching staff. And I'm not saying that is what has happened here, but that's how a coach of the year gets into trouble, is when the effort doesn't look like it's there. And so, those would be things that Dan would be considering and consulting with Kobe on if that's what they're doing. But I would also, organizationally, this is a team fundamentally that does believe in its roster and also does allow for injuries to impact outcomes. So it is entirely possible that Dan is looking at all this and thinking like, well, wait a minute. Darius is not the same Darius because of this toe thing. He needs time. The Evan injury, that's going to set us back a minute. He needs time. We haven't even seen Strus yet. That needs time. So I think because of how much money they've spent on this roster, that actually probably tells you how they're feeling in the moment, that they're okay, and they'll be better when they get the rotation that they want, and some of these guys snap out of shooting slumps. That's what I suspect. But getting beat the way they've been getting beaten lately, and even the games that they win where they're way down against these bad teams, that's not good. That's not a good look, and it raises the questions against everything that I've just said.
Well, because I was going to ask, we say core four all the time. And it's like, well, then people want to make moves. Well, I thought they had problems being able to move Darius Garland before he had a chronic injury. And with the second apron, it's like, okay, people can tweet it all they want. It don't mean it's going to happen. And like the Jared Allen thing I brought up with Lima earlier today, I said he's definitely, in talking to people, he's outperformed his contract, so what are you going to get back? So I think that the only time you probably make a move with the big name players is maybe when you're thinking about blowing it up, and this year you're not going to do that, right?
Yeah, and I also think for our friends and neighbors out there, we need to remind that if you're a second apron team, it's because you fundamentally believe that those specific players were going to get you where you need to go. And if you're a second apron team that decides this isn't going to work, the moves that you make to get out of the second apron mean that you're bringing back less talent in the near term. So if you want to blow this up now, like if you want Darius out, or if you want Jarrett out, or if you think you're going to move on from one of the other two core guys instead, the return that you get on that trade is not going to be A, what you paid, and B, like the all-star caliber that of player, because you're trying to move on from the expensive players to recreate flexibility and maybe build back around the player or two that you keep. So just keep that in mind, that you're not trading one of these four guys to get better now. You really can't. That deal's not out there and the rules restrict it so much. So, when you start going down that road, it's to take a step backward for future flexibility.
The great Joe Vardon, at Joe Vardon on Twitter, from The Athletic. Joe, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for the time.
All right, guys. Good to talk to you.
Joe Vardon on the Fan Hotline. Have you